Welcome to the Dark Horde Podcast, episode number 26. 26 episodes, and they've been a little spotty here and there. But before I get started, the first thing I want to say is that next Saturday at 10 p.m. Central, we will have the trifecta of shows for the Dark Horde. It will be on YouTube, broadcasted live, and then later on, it will be placed on mobile podcast format. But it will be the three psychics we've heard on the show before: Addie, Charlotte, and Chris. And they're going to sit on there and bring you some skills on Halloween night. So if you're scared about your future or not ready to hear about it, you don't want to join us for the next episode. But if you're curious, or if you're trying to reach someone, or you need maybe a little bit of a tarot card insight, next week is the week for you. Now, I know you'll have a house full of kids jumping up and down. Hell, maybe your friend will be, or your cousin, or even your mom and dad. Who knows? Someone's going to get into the candy and get a little crazy. Now, it is a 2020 COVID-19 year, so maybe there won't be too much candy to go around, but fuck, go get your own. You ain't got to wait for people to bring you candy. Just get your own. Have a sugar high, and join us on YouTube. If you look at the description before we even get started today, you can get on YouTube and subscribe, put a little bell notification on and all that good stuff. So that way you know. There's even an option to set a reminder so that the moment it goes live, you'll know about it. So go ahead and set that up. And then if you want to know, if you have questions, there will be a link supplied during the live show where you can call in via your mobile phone, any computer, any tablet. All it's going to ask you is for your name. Give a fake name. No fucks are given. It's okay. You don't even have to show your face, but you will show up as a little avatar on the YouTube so you can ask your questions. But if you're kind of scary and you're not someone that's used to doing things like that, you can also just simply type your question to the psychics on the live chat. Just as simple as that. The three of them are hilarious, friendly, and they've got skills that you want to experience for yourself. Today I came across an article. Actually, I came across quite a few. We're getting close to Halloween, and there's a lot of ghost story articles out there. As a matter of fact, the Huffington Post had one that had 10 stories. Then I saw one for 20 stories, and the list just keeps going. Today we have 3. Now, the one thing I'm not very good at is telling scary stories because I'm kind of dramatic. Like, I want to go straight for the punchline every time. So I tend to rush the story. And so there's not a good delivery, let me just say that, and not very dramatic. But we got 3 stories. They're kind of short, but still, it gives you a little something to think about. Because I'm sure that wherever you are, there are stories just like this. Stories that were told by your parents or your grandparents, your uncles. Stuff that even some that might be familiar that you heard as a kid, and you went ahead and shared it with your children. But that's what we got today. So let's get started with a little tune like this one. The great thing about these stories is that they are being told by folks who experience them firsthand, or they live in the area where the incident occurred. So that makes them all the more interesting. Now, I wouldn't say that they're scary, but for some people, they can be. These are things they might be commonplace and are told a lot. If you look at the description for the episode, you see the link to the article and the stories and the perspective that's being shared. The first one comes from Brad Culp. Brad Culp was a student at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. How does that work? I don't know. I'd much rather be at the actual Miami University in Florida. There was a rumor that the town that was at one point known as the most haunted place in America, that there's some scary business going on. There was one story in particular. And this story happened on Oxford Milford Road. By the way, Bugs, the UFO hunter, is behind me right now, snoring away. If there's anything scary in my life right now, it would be Bugs at night. But he's easy to locate, that's for sure. It turns out that there was an article because Culp was part of the on-campus magazine, and he published some stories regarding some local phantoms that were fascinating. One of them in particular kind of stood out in his mind, and he wanted to find out about it. The story happened a few decades before, around the 1940s, and there was a young man that was courting a young lady in a rural part of town. Of course, back in the day, parents were strict. They didn't give no fucks about it. You weren't going to court someone that their parents did not approve of. This was the case for this young man and this young lady. Though they were in love, the young woman's parents did not approve of it. So what they would do is, in the middle of the dark, they'd find ways to meet. As soon as the parents went to bed, the young lady would sneak out of the farm and head over to her parents' car. She would flash the headlights 3 times. And by the third flash, her suitor would arrive on his motorcycle. That's how they met at night. In the cover of darkness, away from the parents, they would sneak away. And off they would go to spend time together. Until one night, after receiving the flashes, the young man took a right turn to the house a little too sharply. The turn was so sharp. The motorcycle went one way, the young man's body flew in another, and he suffered severe injuries. Injuries that he never survived. Rumors are that along that road, along Oxford Milford Road, his spirit, his ghost, his essence still haunts the road. Hearing about this as part of his research for the college magazine, Brad Culp decided he wanted to know more. Culp and his girlfriend at the time decided they wanted to go one dark night, to that road to verify the story. His girlfriend at the time was worried, and she was really freaked out because apparently she believes in things like this, the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, hauntings. She's a true believer. Him, not so much. Culp was not entirely convinced, but he did want to try it. So on that night, they decided to drive out to Oxford Milford Road. And the story is that if you could drive up to the road and you flash your headlights 3 times, something will happen. Culp says, no joke, we flashed the lights 3 times. And in the distance, one single light turned on. He says a single light appeared about 3/4 of a mile down the road. And the quote is, you saw it start to come, going pretty slow. It kept coming and coming. My wife was freaking out. Girlfriend at the time. It was coming closer and closer. He says it seemed like a collision was imminent. So Culp turned on his car lights. He expected to see a kid on a bike, or someone bailing from a bike, or a prank that they were playing on him. But there was nothing. The light was gone. Him and his girlfriend at the time, currently his wife, they got out of the car and walked around. They figure something had to have been there because they saw it. It was in front of them. He says to this day, they talk about it as something they couldn't explain. And if you get them, or on a campfire at night in the woods somewhere, they will tell you that the story is real. It really happened. But Culp and his wife invite you to Oxford, Ohio, and get on Oxford Milford Road at night and test it for yourself. Find out firsthand if there was a ghost there. If the spirit of that young man is still there waiting for his beloved to signal that he can pick her up. It is one crazy story, but you hear things like this all the time. That the bond between the two was so strong that he's still there waiting. The story itself doesn't really talk about what happened to the girlfriend that was kept by the parents from openly being in a relationship with this young man, but I could imagine that she was heartbroken that things came to an end like this. It's a pretty sad story, but a good ghost story nonetheless. So if you guys are in Ohio and have actually visited this road or live in that town, let me know if you've ever gone out there and flash your lights. especially if somebody flashed back. There is an amazing thing that you see when you're out, like in the mountains somewhere, and especially if you live like those ski towns where you're in the mountains and you get that white blanket of fresh snow. It's amazing to see the nature of it. Even from a distance, the mountains just would look so majestic. But they're treacherous, right? Nature has a way of making the most beautiful, amazing sights bring you to reality, and that is that you're merely human. And even in beautiful places, there are some really scary and things that you are not able to overcome, no matter how hard you try. This next story was actually told by someone who used to be the owner and manager of Flathead Lake Lodge. The lodge was out in Montana. And there are things that happen that are really strange and you can't explain. Some of them are tied to just people being evil. Or is it maybe something out of this world? Doug Averill grew up. His parents had 8 boys, so you can imagine all the craziness that went around in Flathead Lake Lodge. How things got crazy and how well people got to know the Averill boys. Doug says they rode around as a gang of little cowboys. Literally, they would get on horses. In the summer of 1960, the boys were out on this humongous property that the family owned. And they came across a horrific scene. There were 3 cows dead, and they were neatly arranged in a circle. Not a single cow had a wound in it. At least none that were visible. Their reproductive organs were removed. No blood, no scars, no wounds. Almost akin to what we hear in stories of cattle mutilation. Avril went ahead to say, I should say Doug. Doug went ahead to say that he remembers that around this time in the United States, people were obsessed with aliens. There were many write-ups in the local newspaper regarding ETs and strange things happening with reproductive organs. But that wasn't the strangest thing, because there were a series of really strange events. There was one day where Avril and his friends came across a spear that was laying on their path. There was a note on it. It was a threatening note. He remembers thinking that possibly the things that were happening, especially with the cows, and now the spear, it was people being malicious or had evil intent. After finding the spear, things really started to get a little crazy in the days that followed. First one is that the boys that were together, the brothers, they stopped at a local bar to grab a hamburger. They were actually at their truck and they were pulling horses. They were in a trailer. They were tightly packed together. They went into the bar. And when they came out, they noticed something strange. The horse that was in the middle of the trailer, surrounded by the other horses, but one with very much less opportunity to get out of the trailer as the others, was no longer in the trailer. It was loose. But yet, the other horses were still in the trailer. They couldn't figure out how this horse got out. There was a mystery to them. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs that anyone was trying to open a trailer or anything like that. They had no idea. Because the horse was in the middle. Doug said, we had no idea how this possibly could have happened. That horse unloaded without unloading all the others, he says, would have been impossible. The following day, a new wrangler on the ranch fell off his horse. In a freak accident, the wrangler was severely injured. What was weird to them is that they were all riding all day. But not a single person actually saw the wrangler fall. Nobody knows how it happened. They were all together. But he was on the ground. And his injuries were so severe, he was permanently disabled from that day forward. Doug's mind continued to go to the day where he found the spear. And then the cows before that. Trying to put together how is it that these things are all connected, because they're strange. They're very strange. Finally, one more horrific thing happened. An old cook drove out to meet the brothers. And for some reason, when he arrived at the ranch, he noticed that the tailgate from his truck was missing. Gone. Now, how does this happen? How do you, on a drive, how does your tailgate just disappear? That's a lot of weight. And I would imagine that even on a dirt road, you would hear that some bitch hit the ground as you leave it behind. Strange. The funny thing is that before he left his home, he knew the gate was there. He loaded it up. In fact, he had a trailer that he was also pulling. And what he noticed is that his horse, his favorite horse, Betsy, had fallen out of the truck and been dragged the entire length of the way to meet the Averill boys. The man was heartbroken. It was his favorite horse. Many times, Doug says, he felt that we probably needed to put him down as well, because of how heartbroken he was. Doug says it was so strange how these things happen one after another, all starting with the cattle, the spear, and then they just continue from there on. But recently, at the time that this story was published, he got a call about a drowned bull. A bull that was out. Doing the normal things bulls do, right? On a remote part of the ranch. A neighbor had seen a pack of 16 wolves, and normally wolves don't bother buffalo or bulls. But the fact that there were 16 of them was kind of strange for the area. When they went out to the area to investigate this significant size of a pack of wolves, there in the snow was a bull. No bullet holes, no teeth marks or gashes, just a corpse. What they found strange was that even though the bull was dead, there actually wasn't any type of scavenger animals marks on him either. Nothing around them. No buzzards. But what was missing was the reproductive organs again. Gone. In the middle of the snow, where the bull was, there was one footprint. And that's all there was. Just one. Averill himself thinks that he's dealing with people, malicious people with evil intent, but many ask him if he thought that maybe he was dealing with aliens. He says he's pretty much sure that it's humans, but he'd rather believe that it is aliens because it would be sad to think that a human being would do some of these horrific things. Pretty strange indeed. I honestly, in looking at the story, I thought it was aliens myself. But I guess it would be easier to blame something from outer space than your fellow man.
I could give you a clue.
This next one is kind of like a familiar theme. We have it here in Texas. The story of the Llorona, but this one didn't originate from Texas. This one is from somewhere else. This story is being told by Drew Tapke. And Drew says, throughout Latin America, there's a lot of variations of the story of La Llorona. Hell, we even had a movie, was it last year or the year before? The wailing woman who is looking for either her lost husband or her lost children. But sometimes both. Why not? The La Parva ski spot in the Chilean Andes. In this story, the woman's name is Lola. And the funny thing is that everyone that lives in that area apparently knows Lola. Everyone remembers her. It's familiar with Lola. They recall interacting with her right before she died. If you head to La Parva, you might run into a local restaurant owner that says he dated her at one time. Drew says that the ski patroller that he heard the story from pointed out to the exact hut where the story took place. The story starts at the peak of one ski season. Lola had a young son, and they planned to spend the day on the slopes because it was great. It was wonderful. So why not? The one thing, according to the story, that the Andes are known for is fog. Thick, unrelenting fog. And as the mother and child went up the mountain into the slopes, a fog rose up from the valley. Usually a fog here is preceded by a real storm, not flurries. A real snowstorm. And the two were caught on the mountainside when this storm happened. They tried to make their way down to the mountain from the top, and they lost contact with one another. Lola was desperate. She wanted to find her son in the middle of a snowstorm on the Andes Mountains. She would run and scream and yell and run and scream and yell for her son. Where was he? How could this be happening? The storm was thick. It was blinding. She could not see, and she stumbled down a steep slope. And she slid down across rocks and ledges. A local lift operator who was returning to his cabin in the area came across her body. He feared the worst. He feared the worst that out in the middle of this horrific storm that he'd found a victim. Of course, he checked her out. He inspected to see if there was any life, and there was. She was barely alive. Her body itself was covered in cuts and scrapes And when he picked her up, she whispered her son's name. That's all he could record. That's all she would say. It's her son's name. He carefully pulled her, picked her up, and took her to the cabin that was just up the hill. He cared for the lady, bandaged her up, tried to keep her from bleeding out. He asked her to stay, that he'd be right back, because he needed to get the doctor to help her out, because she was in bad shape. The bandages were just not enough. When the doctor and the lift operator returned back to his hut, through that thick fog and that snow, the bed that he left the lady on was empty. All that was left behind was sheets filled with blood. For days, they searched. The lady, Lola, and her son were never found. Many of the local folks will tell you that when they're on those slopes, when they're out there at La Parva in the Chilean mountains, sometimes you can hear Lola wailing for her son. Whenever they come across the cabin of that lift operator. It's a really sad story, but there's a theme that we hear very much, because we all know how strong a mother's love can be for a child. And at times it can be strong enough to keep them from moving on and passing. These are three stories that were shared in this article. The link to the article is in the description. You should check them out. And again, if you look for the Huffington Post, there is actually an article with 10 similar stories. 10 ghost stories, because this is the season, right? Don't forget to tune in next week, October 31st, Halloween Day, and get your psychic on. Visit with Charlotte, Addie, and Chris. They might have a message for you from the other side. Hopefully not from Lola, because that would be pretty weird. Or they might have something important that you need to know about your future. But you're not going to know unless you're there. The link for the YouTube channel, again, is in the description. Check it out. And then afterwards, you might just join us on Discord, where we talk about what happened afterwards. We might even talk about you if you can join the discussion. Thank you for listening. I'm psyched for Dark Horde episode number 27 on YouTube. I hope you'll be there. I know I will.